Today, I am chatting with my good friend Deborah, who kind of changed the game for me in 2023. I actually met her in France at a business conference we were both at, and she told me what she did, and I said, I need you. Please come help me. And so she worked with me and my team, and just it was amazing. So, Deborah McDaniel is a CEO, mentor, and support strategist for high achieving women entrepreneurs who desire to shift from being self made to wildly supported. Through helping them cultivate lush ecosystems of support in their business and life, Deborah helps them shift from holding it all to building the foundations and structure to hold for them so they can make more money, have a bigger impact without burning out. We talk about what is the system and what kind of systems you need to set up in your business, even about hiring a team. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Course Creation Mama podcast. I have a really special guest here today that I actually met in France, which is a wild story. And she kind of helped me completely redo my business this year, which I'm sure we will talk about. So, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Deborah McDaniel, and I am a CEO support strategist. And I basically just help women specifically who are running online businesses to get them out of being the center of their business operations so that they have better headspace, they can think bigger, they can dream bigger, and they don't worry about having to hold everything themselves.
Which is hard for us control freaks. It's so helpful once it's done. Okay,
For
so
sure, for sure.
yes. So how did you get here? Like, what's your background? How did you become the CEO mentor?
Yeah, so I got into this position mostly because I've been an entrepreneur for about 3 years. My first year of business, I started a ghostwriting service as a freelancer. I was completely burnt out with corporate America. I had done a lot of project management and numbers and data. I was pretty good at it, but I was so burnt out. I thought, what's the furthest thing that I can do from numbers and data? And I said, I really have a passion for writing. My mom and I had co-written this book together, and I thought maybe I could do this for other people. I should write other people's books. And so I had no audience, I had no network. I sneakily made an account on Upwork, and I was like, I'll just put myself out there, but there's no risk because nobody knows who I am. And my first 4 days, I booked my first ghostwriting book. It was a $10,000 project,
Well,
and it was like crazy. And I think about 2 weeks after that, I got another one. And so I just started in this ghostwriting service. And then suddenly I'm starting to get referrals because the people that I'm working with are like just shouting my name from the rooftops and saying how much they enjoyed the process of working with me. And so somebody asked me if I can do editing, and I'm like, sure. So I take an editing course. And so in the course of about 5 months, I've taken this like sneaky project just to see what's out there. And I have a full-fledged ghostwriting and editing service. And now I'm getting asked to learn how to publish and format. And so very quickly, about 6 months in, I scaled to an agency model where I had ghostwriters and editors, and I'm having like a whole publishing concierge business that I hit 100K within about 11 months. It was
wow.
really fast, it was really rapid. I was not, I was blown away by how quickly this thing took off. And at the end of this, like I remember looking at my bank and seeing that I had earned about $114,000, and I freaked out. I shut my entire business down. I stopped ghostwriting. I cut contracts. I gave out refunds. I completely fired my entire team. And it was because I lost control. And it was really weird for me to lose control because I was a control freak. And I was looking at my business and thinking, like, there's no way that I could make this any bigger because, like, it's already hectic. And so on paper, it seemed really successful, really lucrative. I had a wait list that was 6 months out. And behind the scenes, what was happening was I had all the wrong people who were doing, like, I was chasing people to try and, like, get their projects done. And so I'm trying to train new people, I'm chasing other people, I'm having to pick up the slack behind the scenes. And so I'm spending 50 hours just trying to like keep my business afloat. Everything's on fire. I'm caught in the middle. I had a phenomenal online business manager who was trying to rein me in, but I was so overwhelmed that I'm like running away from her. Like, no, don't. I don't have time to like rein this in. It's too far gone. And so I burned the entire business down. I licked my wounds for about, I think, 2 or 3 months of just like what the heck happened. I went from $16,000 a month to two. And I really like sat with how did this go wrong? Like I was such a great leader in corporate America. How did this not translate? And so I thought, okay, I need to earn some income. I can tap back into my project management skills. And what I'll do is I'll become an online business manager for women who are already making multi 6 and 7 figures because clearly they know something that I don't. And so I'll give them a service and I'll be able to see behind the scenes and really like help, but also teach myself how to do this better. And so that's how I pivoted into what I do now. And what I learned very quickly was that the things that happened to me at the very beginning of my business kind of blowing up and then I lost control of it, it happened at every single level.
Mm.
Everybody is going through the same kind of crisis when your business explodes and you're trying to like keep everything going without losing your mind. And so that's what inspired me to really like dig into, okay, let's look at like leadership principles, let's look at team, let's look at systems, like how can I make this better for everybody so nobody like does what I did.
Oh, wow. I did not know your story. That's amazing. And I feel like there are so many opportunities right now for people to start an online business, but we don't have business degrees. We don't have management degrees. And so you're not just a business owner, you have to be the boss and the CEO and the CFO. And then you start taking on all these roles. And man, that's kind of where I was when I met you, Deborah, in France. I was like, I am doing all the things that I feel really burnt out. And I have built this business so that I can, spend time with my kids. And then, but now I don't get any time. And I'm sure that's every CEO you work with.
Every single one for sure. Like that is the common problem when they bring me in is this doesn't feel good. Like, yes, I want to be ambitious. Yes, I want to make a lot of money, but I cannot see how that's even possible if it feels like this. Like, if it continues down this path of how I'm feeling, I might as well just shut the thing down.
Yeah. So yeah, Deborah and I met, we were at like a training conference in France, which is kind of crazy, but we came together through two different really awesome female entrepreneurs, met each other. She explained what she did, and I was like, I think I need you. I don't know how or why or like what's going to happen, but something needs to change. And at that time, I don't even think I knew really what a system was. So
Right. Yeah.
let's go back like to the basics for people that are listening. They're like, okay, I'm feeling these things. I'm struggling, but like, what is a system? How do I set that up?
Yeah. Okay. So, on like a very basic level, a system can be just like a number of steps, like a process. Like at a very basic level, a system is just how does something get done? And it can be very different for different industries. Even like every facet of your business has some sort of system in place for how you do the things. So even if it's like organic social media marketing, like what is the things that have to happen for you to make a post on Instagram or Facebook? You have to log into it. If you're giving that to a team, the person needs to log into it. Is it like you create a draft and you give it to the team, or do you create the draft and then you have to log in and you have to post it and you have to make a graphic? Like all of those steps put together create a system of running that specific part of your business. So that's at the like most foundational level. Where we want to leverage systems is looking at, okay, these are all the steps that I have to get done. What are some tools that I could put in place that make it easier for me to go from point A to point B to get this thing done. And so that can look like calendars, or that can look like Zaps if you're familiar with Zapier. That can look like there's all sorts of tools that we can utilize to make our systems flow smoother and less manual and clunky, if that makes sense.
And so when should a business owner start setting up systems?
I would say as soon as you know what your process is,
Yeah.
think about how you can make this run smoother and less manual. So, in the beginning of your business, you are often like building the plane as you fly it. You
Right.
don't know what you don't know. And so you're just putting pieces together and you're like, oh, I'm missing this piece. Let me throw this in. Once you know, like, okay, this is my plane. These are all the steps I had to take to build the plane. Now, what can I do so that the next time I have to build this plane again, it's easier for me?
Mm.
So, like again, using the example, even if it's like launching a course, which I know like that's exactly what you do, what are all the steps that you take to like build the course? What are the steps of where you host the course? What are the steps of like when somebody purchases the course, how do they get it? All those little pieces adding together, when can we put in a system or an automation that takes a manual thing off of your plate and introduces something that can get it done for you faster and more efficiently?
Mm. I feel like we have a lot of course creators and membership creators listening. And sometimes I feel like, at least this is how I felt, that maybe systems were more for freelancers or like service providers because they have contracts and onboarding and offboarding and all that. And so I thought, well, I'm just creating content and selling it. What types of systems would I even have? But then when we sat down and you were like, okay, tell me everything that you do, it was so many things, and I didn't even realize I was doing
Yeah.
so many things, like little things that I didn't need to be doing, like answering customer service emails or
Mhm.
tagging people within my system. There's so many things that can be automated. And I think you're so right. If I would have started from the beginning, once I kind of had my system in place and videoed myself, I remember you telling me that, like, video everything
Yes.
that you do and let's save
Mhm.
it somewhere. So everything I did, I started videoing, and it took forever because I mean, I'm like 4 years into my business at this point, but if I had started in the
Yeah.
beginning, and then when I, hired my first team member, it would be so much easier to start handing things off. So I had a
Mhm.
team when I hired Deborah, I had a team of two, but they didn't know, and I didn't know like what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Even though I had a team, I was still doing so much myself. So yeah, the sooner you can start this the systematizing process, the better for sure.
Absolutely. And you bring up such a good point about having people, but not feeling supported by those people because they're not sure what to do and you're not sure what to give them so that it actually like fits and creates the space. Because that's the goal. The goal with the system is to get you out of the thing so that you get some of your time back, so that you have opportunities to spend time thinking about like where's the direction of my business going. If we don't have that space, like we're literally everything's on fire, and it's really hard to think clearly when everything is on fire, and then you bring somebody in and you think they're going to help put out the fire, but what happens is they just jump into the fire with you.
Yeah.
So it's really important, I think, especially like I love this analogy of building the plane as you fly it, because when you're paying attention to how did I build this plane and how can I make it easier to build the same plane the next time, it's a lot easier to figure out, okay, does this step need to be done by a person, or can I put in a tool or like an automation, a software in place to do this? And when you know, like, okay, this thing can't be done by a software, but it can be done by a person, it helps you have a lot more clarity of who should be in your business and helping you and what specifically they should be doing so that you can get your space back. And so often we don't know because we're not paying attention to what is the steps that I'm in that I need to get out of. And so we kind of put them in places where it seems helpful, but it's not helpful because you're still building the plane by yourself and they're like creating their own plane.
Yeah.
But it's like we're not talking to each
Yes.
other.
Yeah, I feel like some people they'll hire a VA and then expect the VA to know what to do. And it's like they don't know. They're just going to do what you ask them to do. And if you're not super
Exactly.
clear, then they might, like you said, try to figure out their own process, but it's different than your process. And then you're going to get, frustrated.
Mhm.
I dealt with that with a few team members, and it was my fault. Like I didn't have a clear plan in place, a system in place. And I think really, especially if you're already an established business owner, maybe you're not at the beginning, but you already are established and you're starting to feel some of these things that Deborah was talking about, doing an audit of everything that you do, and then writing down the process, delegating, and then, like she said, that gives you time to think about the future of your business, which is so important and what so many CEOs are lacking because we're still in the weeds and we can't like zoom out and see, what do I want for next year for my business instead of doing all these little things that really don't matter. So, that's
Absolute.
okay. So, what are some common areas that you see where business owners don't have systems in place?
Mm. Okay, so I feel like this is a loaded question because number one, it depends on the CEO, but I have found that generally where we don't have systems in place is where we feel really scared to
Mm,
hand over control to something or someone else that could potentially decrease the quality of our product. Like it's where we feel we should have the most ownership because this is the most important part of our business. And that is the number one place that you absolutely need to have help.
yeah.
So like it doesn't make sense. Like, no, I should hold this because this thing is like the meat of my business. And it's the thing that drives revenue. It's what I'm known for. It's my reputation. When we have all of these expectations on this one role, that is generally the role that we need to bring in some support. And it's because that is where we will intentionally hide ourselves in the weeds to prevent ourselves from having the space to think of something bigger. It's our comfort zone. It's like that zone of excellence versus zone of genius.
Mm,
This is where I find CEOs hide out in the zone of excellence. It's I've put this product together, my reputation depends on it. I know how to deliver a really stellar product, and I don't want something or someone to come in and accidentally mess this up. And now, like, I'm losing what I've built. That is always like the underlying fear. And that is the number one place that we want to have somebody to come in and support. We want to disseminate some of that responsibility so that it doesn't feel like it's solely on you. It's got to feel like, okay, this is a shared effort. I trust the people to do the things that they can do. I trust the systems and the automations to do what they're supposed to do. And I know that in the one place in this process that I truly shine, I own this, but I don't have to own everything else.
hmm Yeah, and there are very few things in your business that only you can do. There
Absolutely.
are many things that other people can do that maybe you think only you can do, but it's not true. Just to give a specific example, if you're like, okay, what exactly could that be? So when I first started working with Deborah and we were trying to figure out, how to delegate, I was still heavily involved with our members' Facebook group. So much so that like I felt like I needed to answer every question and be available for everyone. And I didn't sell it as like that kind of course. I sold it as a DIY course, but I still felt like I needed to give so, so, so much when really I had a team member who had taken my program and she was trained well. And I gave that to her. She's doing a fabulous job and she answers all the questions. And if she needs help, she'll ping me. But it's not like I have to be in control of every single little thing in the Facebook group, which frees me up for a lot. So I'm sure there's other examples you can think of,
Mhm.
but customer service emails, you don't have to be responding to every single person, there's
Absolutely. It's even like boundaries, right? You brought up a really good point about feeling like I have to be on and I need to respond immediately.
Mm.
Like even just zooming out to being like, okay, what's reasonable? Like based off of the investment that this person made, what is reasonable for me to show up and answer their questions? Is it somebody else coming in and answering the questions and then they ping me when they need me, but now I don't have to be like on alert, on call 24 hours a day? Is it like I just set some boundaries that says like, hey, I'll pop in between this hour and this hour. If I don't get your question, then I'll get it the next day.
Yes. Yeah, I also was really bad about not having set business hours. So I've done a few high ticket coaching programs and they had Voxer access to me. And I was on Voxer at
Mm.
like 10 p.m. And Deborah was like, no, like, stop that, please. I was like, well, I feel like they paid me so much and I need to give them. And she's like, no, that's not what you promised. Like, be clear about what you're promising, but then also be clear about your boundaries and tell them and then stick to those boundaries. And I was not good at that
Mm.
at all.
That was a lesson for me too. Like this is again, like I say this having gone through all of this in my first iteration of my business and just learning these lessons of like I am a recovering people pleaser. So it's like it's so easy to get into like, okay, how do I make this investment worth it? And that's kind of where like this, I need to do all these things because, they paid for it. So they need to have touch points with me specifically. That's what they're paying for. And it's like, okay, no, if we actually zoom out, what did we say we're going to give them? Can we give that to them without having so much access to you? How do
Yes.
we replicate the plane without you being the person that builds the plane and holds it together?
Mm, that's good. That's really good. Yeah. So if you're thinking about, starting systems, think about what are the very few things that only you could do. So like as a course creator, you can create the course, like the videos. You probably don't want someone else doing that if you're selling it as a personal brand. But outside of that, pretty much everything else can be outsourced. I can't think of
Yeah.
anything else other than actually creating being the educator, you're the course creator, but all the other stuff, the sales, the marketing, you can outsource a lot of that.
Absolutely. And as you start to learn, like if you understand your sales process, once you understand it, how do you automate it? Once you've automated it, how can you introduce other people to help bring like whatever pieces you're still holding on to, try and bring a person in to help you with that. And I think that's really like the steps that you should take as you're building your business is going to be you do the thing, you figure it out. How does this flow for you? And then the next step is like, how do I automate this? How do I introduce a tool or a software to make it easier for me to do this thing? And then you document that. So, like you said, I was having you like record everything. Every time you do something, just, start a Loom video and walk through it, and then the next step is bringing a person to do this for you.
Okay, so that kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is building a team that supports you. So I'm sure we have a lot of listeners that have no team. So let's start there. Kind of like how should they hire and how should they go about that process?
Yeah. So if you don't have a team member and you're looking for your first team member, then you want to look at where is your time being most spent, because that's where you want to start with like, okay, can I automate some of these things? And if you've automated, but you're still spending a lot of time doing this thing, then that's the time that you want to bring a person to do that thing. And that's how you want to approach bringing in your first team member is where am I spending the most time to drive my business forward? Or how am I spending the most time on delivering the product that I'm selling?
Mm.
And in that way, who can I bring in that can take that off of my plate? And it's usually like the introduction of how are you delivering the product? How are you maintaining the business that you're running versus growing, right? Because growing, you can introduce people to do all kinds of marketing for you, but you might find that the majority of your time is not spent on marketing, it's spent on delivering the product.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where you want to look is if I were to audit my day, where am I spending the most time that if somebody could free up 5 hours of my week like I could actually focus on growing my business in a way that makes sense for me. And so that's when you start like, okay, I know where I'm spending the majority of my time. I'm going to start to record that I'm doing that I've identified in this audit of myself. And then we can look at, okay, is there a tool that I can put in place that can take some of this off my plate? Or do we need a person to come in and tell me what tool can take this off my plate or do the thing for me?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like in the beginning, for me at least, it was customer service,
Mhm.
emails, and the Facebook group. So just hiring like a customer service VA.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a
Like
lot.
if you know exactly like you're saying, if you know that the majority of your time is being spent like answering customer support emails, bring in somebody to answer them for you. And then you just give them like, here's a rundown of the average questions that I'm getting. Or even like you can have them like go through. That's like a good onboarding to somebody is like, here's like the first day, scroll through some of these emails, see what people are asking and see how I responded to them so that you get a flavor of like how I run this
Mm.
and then have them start to mirror that for you.
Yeah. And then so maybe you already have a VA or a couple VAs, then you kind of move into higher level hiring. So can you talk a little bit about like an online business manager and kind of what that is and how that can help?
Yeah. So there's when you're hiring, there's strategists and then there's implementers. And so your first hire is probably going to be an implementer. That's like a customer support virtual assistant, a general virtual assistant. It's somebody that you give them the specific tasks and then they do the task and you train them and then they do the thing. The next level is going to be a strategist. So a strategist is not just looking at, okay, you told me to do steps one, two, three, and steps A, B, C, but what actually makes the most sense? So they're looking at like, what's the most efficient? What's the best way to get a return on your investment? They're looking at a bigger picture of your business in order to save you money, basically like make everything optimized. And so that's where a strategist like an online business manager comes in is their job is to not be in the weeds like an implementer is. Their job is to be outside of the weeds and look at how everything is flowing together and look for pockets of opportunity where they can make it easier. So it's kind of like if you notice as a CEO that, we have this process, my virtual assistant's doing the process, but it still feels really clunky. You would have to think through how do we make this easier? When you have an online business manager, that's their job. You tell them, how do I make this easier? And they look at the big picture and they look at all the things that are working and they say, okay, how can I simplify this? How can I make this less clunky? And then even a step above an online business manager, you have a COO, which is a fractional service that I offer, and that's looking at like the biggest picture. What are your numbers looking like? What is your launching cadence? How do you deliver the products? How do we keep like customer experience really high? And so it creates like this really nice waterfall effect of you, the CEO, talk to one person. That one person deals with the direct people that need to do the thing and then they make sure everything is flowing really smoothly.
Yeah, that's good. And I feel like that's probably where a lot of people want to go. So
Mhm.
we just trained. I started with a VA, Emily, and then we kind of trained her as Deborah was working with us to be an OBM. The best thing that has happened. It's been amazing. So okay, this has been awesome, and I just love talking about systems. So I know this is going to help so many people. So I always ask all of my speakers about this. Can you tell me an act of generosity that you've done or you plan to do?
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the things that I love to do with my kids is every Thanksgiving, like I love Thanksgiving, I love to cook. And so we will go and volunteer to hand out Thanksgiving food supplies. It's a very like passion project of mine to just make sure that people have enough food to eat and getting my kids involved in volunteering and seeing like the gift of being generous and like even generous with just our time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to get kids involved too and teach them that at an early age. I love that. Awesome, Deborah. Well, this was great. So let's say someone is burning up in the fire right now. Everything feels crazy. How can they find you? How can they work with you?
Sure. So I am mostly on Facebook. My Facebook is facebook.com/DeborahJoyXO. And I'm also on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is XO Deborah Joy. So you can just reach out and send me a message if you like. I'm always available to jam out on systems and strategy. And then I also have paid calls where we do like a full blown business audit, and we kind of like just spend some dedicated time brain dumping together to see what's the best thing that you can do for your business right now to like basically give you some time back.
That's awesome. And we will put all those links below so that you can reach out to Deb. Thank you so much. This is awesome. And I hope you all start systematizing all the things in your business so that you can really move into that CEO role.